So I'm actually going to start a little bit behind the scenes as to what do you actually need to deploy Komprise. The screen you're looking at the moment is our director, and this is the control plane. This is where all of the information is surfaced, but it's purely just the control plane that sits in the cloud. What you're going to need to do is to deploy some virtual machines, some appliances, which are going to sit close to your storage in your data center, and they do all the hard work. And we call those the observers. They're very straightforward to deploy from a virtual appliance file. Just download it, put it into your hypervisor of choice, and then give it some networking information. They'll connect to the director and essentially carry out any of the instructions that we issue from the interface. Once we've got those set up, we need to add our source storage. And Komprise can talk to pretty much anything that is serving out SMB or NFS. So anything that you can be putting files on. Out of the box, we are set up to talk to most of the common platforms that you might see, whether that's various types of Windows Server or some of the more dedicated file servers, file platforms like NetApp or Dell EMC Isilon. Once we've added that storage in, we'll discover and look for the shares that we're interested in. Once we've chosen the shares that we'd like to look at, we will enable those. Once that share's been enabled, it's going to send a message to the observer, and the observer is going to start to crawl that file share. So it's going to work its way through all of the files and the directories, and we're going to be looking specifically for that file system metadata. So we don't need to open the files up. We're just looking to find out what the file system knows about them. How big is the file? Who owns it? Most importantly, when was it last accessed? And we're going to collect that data together, and we're going to aggregate it and summarize it at a share level. And that's going to give us this picture of how hot or indeed cold is our data. And we represent that in the plan screen.
So this actually will work with your on-prem and your cloud data stores.
Yes, if it's accessible. We do have a platform which is designed specifically to look at object storage, and that does a very similar thing where the observer is going to crawl through the object storage bucket and look at the metadata around the objects contained in it. So once we've collected all that data together, we're going to summarize it on this screen here. And we summarize it in the graph that we refer to internally as the data donut. And this really shows us how hot, the percentage volume of data across the entire estate, across all of those enabled shares from different platforms, how much of it is hot and how much of it is cold. Our standard setup is that anything that is blue hasn't been touched for a year or more. Now you can see in this particular little demo environment that just over half of my data hasn't been touched for over a year. And that's quite conservative compared to what we would see in the field, where frequently 60–70% of data hasn't been touched in a year or more. And if it's not being used, then perhaps there's somewhere better that you can put it. Taking a little bit more into the analysis and going just that little bit deeper, we can start to break down some of that data by the other bits of metadata that we've collected. So we can look at the breakdown of files by type. Have we got files that perhaps are in the wrong place? Have you got backups being kept in team drives? Have you got database files being kept in personal drives? The wrong type of data in the wrong place can be a very expensive way. If you're storing data that really should be sitting in tier 2 on tier 1 storage, then that's very expensive, because not only have you got to provide a capacity for it, but you've got to be able to replicate and back that data up. So a small amount of data at the front end can actually require a fairly significant investment throughout the storage cycle.
Yeah, like one of the topics that you'd mentioned in your earlier sessions about rot data, redundant, obsolete, trivial, and how we end up having to buy storage at today's prices to store data that we may use years from now, or maybe we used it years ago. And this is a really great way to get some insight on that.
Absolutely, Lee. It's a great way to start to uncover where that rot data is sitting. And another great example of the obsolete data is data from people who are no longer with the company. The looking at the space by the top owners can really highlight that very quickly. It's very common in academic circles, where you might well have data that belongs to students who graduated 5 years ago. That data is probably not really the sort of data you want sitting on your tier one storage. So we can identify that very quickly.